Hi, everybody. I am so excited to be back here with you live this week to talk to you all about how to stay organized as a treasurer. As you can see, the lighting today is extremely bright because it snowed overnight. Yay, it's March and still snowing. But I'm excited to be with you nonetheless. But again, sorry for the funky lighting. I cannot do anything. And the sun is out, so it's especially weird, but whatever. Try not to blind myself with stuff coming in. Okay, so all this month, I'm kind of not doing like a super deep dive, but kind of a deep dive into all things treasure and financial. So last week, I was here talking to you about how to protect your PTO from theft, fraud, and embezzlement, which is super important. You never, ever, ever want that to happen to you or your group. That would just be horrible. And this week, we're going to talk about staying organized. And next week, we're going to talk about how to make and set a budget for your group. So all super important. So make sure to tune in for that if you haven't already gotten on your schedule. So today, let's talk about getting organized. And I don't know, I know for sure I've mentioned this before, but in real life, when I'm not here talking to you about PTO stuff and I'm not in the schools volunteering as a PTO leader, I am working with clients to help them get organized as a professional organizer. So I really have a passion for talking about how to organize things. And I definitely know a lot of really awesome strategies to get you organized and keep you organized. Because like I said, that's what I do. So that's why I'm especially peppy about this topic today. So let me just dive right in and just tell you my favorite thing for getting organized as a treasurer. And I think this is absolutely necessary, especially for treasurers, maybe more so than compared to other PTO positions. And that is because there's so much paperwork that you have to deal with as a treasurer. And if you don't have paperwork, then you are setting yourself up for failure, because I don't know what you're going to provide for the auditor to take a look at come year's end. So the thing that you absolutely need to be putting together is a binder. And I meant to grab my husband's binder because, he's treasurer of one of the PTOs in our district. And hey, Cassandra, thanks so much for tuning in. So I meant to grab it because actually it's on my dining room table right now, but I had a brain fart and didn't, because I just wanted to show you how he had it set up, which is very similar to how I recommend having it set up. And I didn't even do it for him, but he's just smart like that. Guess I've rubbed off on him over the almost 20 years that we've been married. So let me just go ahead. I'm going to share our live stream before we really get into this with the PTA PTO Superstar Leader group. If you are not part of that group, you have to get into that group. So you can find it at bit.ly. Sorry, my son is also texting me. bit.ly.PTO leaders. So let me just see. I'm so challenged with this kind of stuff. All right, here we go. So anyway, you definitely need to get yourself a binder. And for treasurers, what I highly suggest you do is that you don't have like a super huge binder, because I think it just becomes unwieldy. Like I've seen some people with like 3-inch binders. Lordy Lord, I don't think that's comfortable to carry around with you. I don't think it just doesn't hold up, and it also doesn't. It's hard to carry around. It hurts your back. I think it encourages you to keep too much stuff that you don't really need on hand. So if you should definitely be having a binder, but I suggest like maybe 2 to 3 inches, no more than 3 inches. If you fill up a 3-inch binder, the rings are actually going to start to separate really quickly. It'll be a mess. So get yourself like I said, 2 to 3 inches. Anything more than that, you probably don't need to be carrying around with you like on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. Like that's maybe something that should be put into the PTO archives. So consider that. So in your binder, you should be having a copy of your bylaws and standing rules, because every once in a while, there's going to be somebody who wants you to do something and like reimburse you or reimburse them for something that's not permitted in the bylaws and standing rules. Like they won't do it intentionally, but they're just like not going to know. And just to protect yourself as a treasurer, you need to be really up to date with all of your group's rules and regulations so that you're following them, right? Because that's part of your duty as a treasurer and an officer of the group. Let me just grab my pen here. And so how I like to keep my copies of bylaws and standing rules are like those little slash pockets. They're like poly, like the see-through little things. You can get Staples, but they fit into binders really nicely and they don't add too much bulk. And then you can just slip a copy of the bylaws and standing rules so you have them on hand. So the other thing that you definitely need in your binder are some section dividers. So you can use the tab dividers, and you really need 2 sets of them. One, I suggest getting a set of 12 for every month of the year. And that's how my husband had it set up. And I thought, oh, that is like super smart of him, because he files each receipt and each form that he gets that's requesting money or asking for a cash box or anything like that. He files them by month, so that at the end of the year, he can take out the information that will get rolled over to the next year, like the bylaws and standing rules, but he can hand the rest of the binder, which has all of the information that the auditor will need, to the auditor so that they can do the annual audit. So it's a nice way to keep organized, so that way you're not just handing the auditor a big tote bag full of junk and being like, have fun. Because especially if they're a volunteer auditor, you're not going to want to give them such a mess like that. So get yourself a set of 12 tabs like that. And then also get yourself of 8 tabs, because there are different things that you need to have in your binder so that you can make sure you have everything on hand. So here are the dividers that I think you should have in your planner. So, and I close my tab with that. I am all kinds of hot mess today, and I apologize for that. I think the snow has really done a doozy on me. So let me just pull this up here, because I want to have everything here. Okay. So like I said, there are 8 sections that I think you need to have, like, kind of just set out so you can quickly recall the information. Because the one thing that I found, again, I've never been treasurer, but I've been president several times, and I've been married to a 3-time treasurer. I'm still married to him. So I've seen what goes on. And actually, I've had really close friends that were treasurers of the PTOs before my husband. So I know what it's like they just are processing a lot of information, always getting asked a lot of questions, because people want to stay on budget. And by people, I mean committee chairs and officers. So they're constantly asking for information, wanting to stay up to date. So anyway, here are the 8 different sections that you need in your binder. And I've actually already told you about bylaws and standing rules. So here are the other ones. So you're going to need a section for your budget. This is really important, because as treasurer, you're kind of tasked with making sure that you don't run into the red for the year, right? Because you are actually signing your name on the checks and giving out money. So ultimately, it is going to be you being responsible if someone goes over budget. And because you can't, I don't know, it's not like you can take out a loan for PTO. So you need to make sure that you, as in your PTO, is not spending more than you're bringing in. So you should have a copy of the budget that your group has agreed to in your binder. And then you need to have a section for things that you're working on currently. Like maybe you're waiting for outstanding reimbursements or reimbursement forms from people, and you don't want to forget. Or maybe it's right in the middle of a fundraiser, and there are some monies that are going to come due at the end of the fundraiser, but you just need to be prepared to have them. And maybe an officer has already sent them to you and said, heads up, we're going to need a check at the end of May. Well, you're obviously not going to send the company a check right now. I guess you could, but probably no need to send it quite so early if it's needed in 2.5 months. Next, you're going to need a section for your account information. And what I mean by account information, I mean like your bank account. Do you have a Cheddar Up account or a Square account? You're going to want to have all that information in one place so that you're not searching for account numbers and passwords. The next section you're going to want to have is that you're going to our monthly treasurer's report. So you're going to want to see what you've reported in the past months, because again, you're going to have to turn this into or hand this over to the auditor when they do their annual review. But then people are going to ask, like, what do we have last month? And it's just good to compare all of the information month over month and have it in one place. So I suggest having it under a second heading or a separate section. You're also, just for you personally as a treasurer and an officer, are going to want to track the meeting agendas month over month so you know what's been decided. A lot of times there will be votes made during meetings, of course, that allocate different amounts of money, or maybe moving money from one section to another committee, or adjusting the budget, and you're going to want to take notes on that and keep them all in one place so you can make sure you're doing this. The next section you're going to want is a reference section, and that's going to be for information that you don't necessarily need to do anything with, but you're going to need to reference it. So, for example, a record retention policy. Super important to have one of those, and also know how long you need to be retaining different information as treasurer. I think from a professional organizer standpoint of view, people hang on to like way more paper than they ever need, like something like 80% more. And I think for PTOs and PTAs, it's actually a much higher number, because we're turning over the books each year and turning over the job. Like, there's just such a high rate of turnover in the positions that people don't exactly know what they should be keeping and what's okay to be, letting go of. So they just keep everything, which can really be a problem, because that's where you end up getting those ginormous binders that are just chock full of information that you don't need to keep anymore. So having that into your reference section is a really good idea. The last section that I really think, and this is, if you would really, it's so important to have these on hand, are all of your forms. So I'm talking about like your deposit forms and your check request forms and all of that. So anything someone's going to ask you for, if you just keep extra copies of it in your binder, again, in one of those poly slash folders, then you can just whip it out when they ask for it, and it'll be like awesome, and everybody will have what they need. And it'll make life so much easier. So those are the kind of major sections that you should be having in your binder. And then from there, you're also going to want to have like the different forms and stuff that I talked about within those sections. So let's go over the forms that I think you need to have, because again, all of this is just to save you time so that you're not duplicating efforts. You're not just wasting time like making up forms, and that you also have all the information that you need, so that you don't have to keep asking people for information. You can make a form or get a form with all of the different line items of information that you need. And you can say, I'm not going to give you a check unless everything's filled out in this form. And people understand that. And so they fill that out, and then you have everything you need, so that it'll just make your job easier when you go to input in all of the information. So for example, if you're getting a deposit, instead of having to figure out what the deposit should be credited to, like, is it membership dues? Is it fundraising income? Is it a straight out donation? Like, you're going to want to delineate all that information in your treasurer's report and in the PTO records. So if you have it there on the form, then it makes your job much easier. You don't have to guess as a treasurer. You're just a data entry input kind of person at that point. So here are the different forms that I think you need to have on hand in your binder. So the first one, I already mentioned it, the deposit form. And there's actually two kinds of deposit forms that I think that are really good to have. One is like a general deposit form, and that could be used for like larger amounts of money. Actually, it could be smaller, but if it's just like one single category and it doesn't have like a lot of cash. So for example, if you got a check, if your PTO did a restaurant fundraiser night, like a restaurant spirit night or whatever, so you got a check for like, let's say, $150 from Papa John's, then you as treasurer would ask for a deposit form to be noted so that you know what category for it to go under. Yes, you probably could figure it out, but life will be so much easier if you have a form and people just fill it out for you, because sometimes there are like funky things. And even like my husband doesn't always require that the forms be filled out. And so sometimes he'll have to ask me and I'll be like, oh, that's actually for this. And yes, I know that it's a check from Chipotle, but actually it was a straight out donation versus a fundraiser because of blah, 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 blah. So it just helps to keep everything straight. So then the second type of deposit form you're going to want to have is an itemized deposit form. And I became very familiar with these myself because I ran concessions for the junior high. And so I was collecting a large amount of cash. And so it was really handy to give my husband the deposit form that said exactly how many pennies I was giving him, exactly how many dimes, exactly how many dollar bills, and so on. And I say especially good for me because I am numbers challenged, and sometimes I flip numbers and sometimes money sticks together and I don't quite notice. But I am very proud to tell you I was only off by $2 the whole season. One time I was missing $1, and one time I had an extra $1. So my husband was like, you did great. It all washed out. So super, super helpful to have that. And again, I mentioned this in my blog post and the video last week that you need to have the itemized deposit forms so that you can create that paper trail to lessen the opportunity for theft or embezzlement from your group. Because if you have a paper trail, then there's documentation and people can be called on the carpet. If, let's say, you hand the treasurer, $1,200 and only $1,000 is deposited, they're going to have to answer for the extra $200, right? If you don't have it documented, they can be like, you totally only gave me $1,000. You're like, I swear it was $1,200. Well, it's your word against their word. And yeah, that's still suspicious, but you don't have a paper trail to prove it. So protect yourself by creating that paper trail. All right, the next form that you should have at hand in your binder is a check logging form. And you can do it electronically, or you can make yourself a form, or you can get the form that I have available for you. And that's just a list of all the checks that you're going to turn in. A lot of banks require this form to be turned in when you are giving them a big old stack of checks, because it makes it easier for everybody to know that they got each and every check. Like if they're written down, there's something to cross check against. If you're just handing them a big old stack of checks, I've had banks misplace checks for me personally when I wasn't depositing a huge stack of checks. So the likelihood of two checks sticking together or something crazy like that happening, it happens. So just, you can protect yourself against that by, again, creating a paper trail of what you're giving them. So the check logger should have maybe the check number, who it was written by, and the amount. It's also super handy to have on hand in case a check bounces, because then you can go back to your check logging form, and because it takes a while for the check information to be returned to you. Usually they send it by mail, but if you see electronically that a check bounced in the amount of $36.34, then you can go on to your check logging sheet and see who gave you a check for $36.34, and then you can contact that person and be like, hey, you bounced a check, here's the bounce check fee, and give us our money. So you can get that process started a lot faster. All right, the next form, I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth form that you need is a payment request form. Now, this form should have on it, like, who's requesting the money, what account or what part of the budget it's coming out of, how much they need, who the check should go to, and all that kind of good information. And again, a lot of this could be done maybe electronically, but I'll tell you why that's a mistake. Have you heard that about this happening? Because some people have been reporting it in the Superstar Leader group, but I've also heard about it just, I think generally, because I think I have a lot of friends on Facebook who are involved in PTA and PTO. And what was happening was scammers were getting the email addresses of PTO presidents and treasurers, and they were spoofing the president's email address, sending a payment request to the treasurer for the treasurer to send, a check to wherever in some amount. Well, it wasn't a legitimate request. It was totally like a scam. Well, if these groups had been using the paper check request forms, or even you can do it digitally, but if you're just insisting that every check request come or payment request come with this documentation, then you would never fall victim to that scam. And I think it's getting, scammers are getting savvier and savvier. They're spoofing our emails so you can't even tell sometimes. So that's another really good way to protect your group. Okay, so then the next two forms, actually it's three forms I'll talk about all at the same time, have to do with cash boxes. Again, near and dear to my heart since I just finished the concession season. You should have a form for people to fill out so they can ask for a cash box, so that they can fill out like exactly how much money they need and what denominations they need. And then when you'll have, documentation about why you were withdrawing that money from the bank account, kind of just to paper your own tush. And then when you give them the cash box with the money in it, there should be a form in there saying how much money is in there. And then when the membership chair or the fundraising chair or the family event chair returns the cash box to you, there should be another form in there saying how much money is being returned to you in the form of a cash box count sheet. Again, super critical for staying on the up and up and making sure that nothing is taken. So yeah, make sure you insist upon those. Insist. All right. The next form that I think you need to have in your PTO treasurer's binder is a sheet that tracks all of the bank account signers. And I will tell you that this might not be an issue for every single bank, but it happened with us. So our PTAs in this district, we use a couple different banks, and they all have different policies. Some more strict than others. So for my upper elementary school PTO to get added to the bank account this year, we just had to send a letter to the bank on like PTO letterhead, and then a copy. So a letter saying that, I'd been elected as president and my friend Janine was elected as treasurer, and that, and then we also had to include a copy of the minutes. That's all it took for us to get people onto the bank account. And then when we went in, we said, oh, by the way, take off last year's people, which was actually my husband. So we're like, take him off so he would no longer have authority to take out cash from the PTO bank account because he's no longer treasurer there. And so it was really easy. However, at the junior high bank, we bank with a different bank, and they wanted everybody who was on the account to come in all at the same time to either add or remove someone. Who has time for that? Nobody has time for that. And what happened was we had, I think, 6 people on the account. Like there were people that have moved out of state who were still on the account, so they could technically take money out. We had people who had moved, 40 minutes away, and it would have been a huge, huge pain. And so my husband was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, because technically, like I just said, they can take out money. They still have authority. I mean, they're not going to because they're not horrible people, but that chance exists. And so if that PTA had been using the bank account tracking form, then they would have seen who was on the account and could have taken steps to get them off faster. As it is, we're still negotiating with the bank to try and get people off of the account without having to bring them all in, because they legit want all 6 of us there at the same time, which is just bananas. All right. The next form I think you need to be using to stay organized as a PTO treasurer is the password account password tracker. And that is just because I just don't think it's possible to remember all the stinking passwords you have in your life. And I think that you should make it easier on yourself and have everything written down in one place. So that's an easy reference point. And along with that, also like to track all the bank account information. Because like I said, we bank at different banks. So my two PTAs, we're at two totally different banks on totally different areas of the city. And I need to be nice to have notes on like when they're open. Are they open on Saturday? What time? Like what's the account number? And also I will say, I just went to our PTA council meeting last night, and one person had actually accidentally taken money. So she personally banks at the same bank that the PTA is banking at. And she had mistakenly taken the money out of her own personal account to pay for a PTA fundraiser instead of the PTA account. Not sure how she didn't notice, but if you have all of the account numbers written down, I bet you'll learn them and be like, oh, those aren't the last same four. The last four of mine are, XYZ. And the last three of the PTA are ABC. So yeah, you need to have all of that information in one place. So really, to stay organized, you just need to have everything in one place and have it set up in a way that you can get easy access to it. And so I've gone ahead and taken care of all of the hard work for you, and I've put all of this together into I'm called the treasurer's planner. Nothing fancy, because you didn't need anything fancy. You just need something that's really quick and straight and to the point. So I have dropped a link to the treasurer's planner because it's available in my shop right now. And I'm bouncing the table, so I'll stop that. So I dropped the link in the description of this video, so you can go ahead and check it out there. But I swear it's like the best $15 you'll ever spend to get yourself organized, because you can use it year after year, can reproduce as many of the forms as you need, makes your life so much easier. The incoming treasurer will love you because you're going to hand her this beautiful planner with everything all organized, and she'll be like, you are a goddess. So you'll have her undying affection and adoration. So yeah, so that is what you kind of get in the planner. It's a really nice little printable tool to use. So it doesn't look like we have any questions, but I'll wait for a second and to see if anybody has any questions about anything I didn't touch on, or if you're wondering why I recommend a certain thing or whatever. But yeah, so the next couple weeks, we're going to be continuing to talk about all things treasure related. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to create a budget for your PTO. And I think the week after that, we're going to be talking about how to give a treasurer's report. Because again, I've been involved in a lot of different nonprofit organizations. And it's really funny to see, not funny, haha, but funny, interesting to see the difference in the amount of information you get. Sometimes the treasurer's report have every single thing you need to know. And sometimes it's just like a little hint of an information that you need, but it doesn't quite give you the full picture, and it's a real shame. So I'm going to teach you how to give one that has all the information you need. Because when you give people all the information that they need, you're being transparent and really increasing the confidence in your PTA and PTO when you give all the information you need. All right, so it doesn't look like there's any questions, so I shall leave you now. But again, join me next week where we're going to be talking all about PTO budgeting. And if you have any questions, if you're watching this on the replay, go ahead and just pop in your question, and I'll hopefully be notified, and I'll get back to you with that. So have a great week, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.